which means that this is hosted in cloud. It can also be hosted it on premises. So when I say on premises, you are working for a company, say for example Tata Motors or any other company. You're working and they want to implement D365. They will say we are not very confident on cloud. We want everything to be in our network. So it can be accessed only when you are in that company's network. So that is called on premises. But when an application is hosted on cloud, you can access it from anywhere. Correct? Gmail is an best example. You can access Gmail from anywhere. So it's also cloud based uh, service. Correct? So within this, like you can see here Microsoft Azure Active Directory. Okay, so Active Directory is nothing but, say for example, you are working for a company and they want to identify you with some kind of a identification. For example, Government of India identifies you in the name of Aadhaar, right? So like that, company can identify with you with your employee ID. Okay, so each employee, if they want to work in their network, right, so they have to be part of something called as Azure Active Directory. Okay, now it is renamed as Entra ID. So please make note of that because it could be asked in your interviews, right? Microsoft Entra ID. Everyone, for example, I am working in a company called AX Factory, right? So Pradeep at AX Factory is my identification and it will be a part of my Active Directory. So to use D365 to be a user, I have to be a part of an Active Directory. That's why you see here there is a two-way communication arrow that is shown here, right? Moving on the left side you see other services which interact with D365. But these services are not the services that consume with the D365, but these are essential services for anyone to use and set up D365 in the organization. Correct? Now, moving ahead, what is LCS? So, it is a kind of a portal from where you can configure your D365 environment. So Microsoft, when it is hosting any applications on the cloud, which means it will take care of the hardware requirements of that application, the software that are needed for that applications, and also it manages the performance of that application. So D365 is an application which is hosted on cloud. Microsoft says, I will manage it for you. All you have to do is buy a subscription in the sense, for example, you want to use Netflix. Okay, to use Netflix, you have to subscribe to Netflix to enjoy the content there, right? Very similar to Netflix. To use D365, you should also be a subscriber of D365. And to use Netflix, you say, okay, I will have one account, two account, three accounts. And based on that, Netflix may charge for three accounts, 699 is my monthly charge where you can watch it on two screens. So similarly, Microsoft also says to use D365, so many users, this is my charge. And if you want to use so many some other instances, so this is my charge. So all of that is mentioned in the subscription, which is then life cycle service is kind of a platform where you will configure D365. You can, I'll show you just a screenshot how the life cycle services look like. And from here, you can do the deployment. Deployment, when I say, when you make any changes in D365, tomorrow a company may come to you and say, hey Pradeep, this is a report I am running, but I want some additional information on that. Can your developers do that? You would go back to your developer and say, customer is asking us to develop a report. Can you do that? developer does all the development, and then you want to bring it to production system. So lifecycle services is a place where you upload all your executable files, then you will deploy it onto finance and operation applications which is hosted on cloud. So that is another use of lifecycle services. Now the third use case is you have implemented D365, everything is fine, but sometimes whenever user is, say for example, you are trying to watch a cricket match on Hotstar, correct? Then you will see your screen is blurring. Okay, you will say, man, streaming is not good, right? So similarly, when in user is using D365, whenever they are trying to do some process, they are seeing there is a lag. Okay, there is a lag. I mean, you click on some button, there is something is happening. So performance is getting hit. So wherever the performance is getting hit, all that is logged in lifecycle services. There are many places, I mean, there are some places where you can basically go and see where is the lag happening and why it is happening and how to correct that. So all of that can also be seen in lifecycle services. Okay. This is at a very high level what is lifecycle service. Coming to Azure DevOps, I think you might guys have seen a lot of job, right? DevOps engineer, DevOps this, DevOps that. Right? So those people, for example, you want to create some repository of your code, right? So I took an example of creating a report, right? So all that has to stay in some kind of a central repository. It cannot just stay in developer system, right? If there are some 5 to 6 developers, all their code has to stay in some kind of a central location, right? So that certain location can be managed in DevOps, right? It, it that is one case, but there could be many cases. Say for example, every month you want to give some releases to D365, then you want to define, okay, this month we are going to release this feature. So all that information you can just track your tickets. Say for example, you have a subscription for some service, right? For example, Airtel is not giving you proper service, or you are having some issues, then you will raise a ticket to Airtel. So how Airtel will say, okay, Pradeep has raised a ticket, or Suman has raised a ticket. So they will kind of have some kind of a place where they will track it. Okay, it could be a bug in their software system, or people may be asking for some feature. So all of that they will collect and they will create a feature, and all that will be stored in DevOps. So you have your feature, you have bugs logged in by user, and then you do the development and all that repository. So you know GitHub, right? It is integrated with GitHub. That is also there in DevOps, and you can write your test cases. And on top of that, you can run CI/CD pipelines. When I say CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. So it your package is deployed, is loaded to lifecycle services. From here, you will deploy to finance and operations. Correct? I guess so far you guys are clear. If you are not clear, just you can unmute and ask me some questions, right? Here they have displayed about the office apps, but right now this is not important for you, but I'll just give you what is it all means, right? You want to export some data from finance and operations, or you want to make some modification and push it back to finance and operations. So that time you can use Excel, Word, all that is integrated with finance and operations. So that's what they are showing here. Sorry that it has, when I took a screenshot, it has, gone. Let's move to next slide. So far, everything is clear for you? I'm not getting any responses. So is it not clear?
It's clear, Pradeep.
Yeah. So this is a screenshot I have just taken to show how the finance and operation application looks like. This is a very basic, very first home screen when you log into D365. This is what it looks like. Okay, so these are different modules within D365. So when I'm not sure, probably when you are booking a ticket on IRCTC or when you are booking ticket somewhere, like you will see different options, right? One is basically to book a ticket, and then another is to cancel a ticket and see the route, book a catering. So there will be different options. They are different modules. Very similarly, within D365, there will be different module: bank management, cost analysis, budget planning, right? So store management. So since it's an ERP, if I can take an example of a company, right? You are running a one textile manufacturing company, or you are running some paper manufacturing company, or something like that. Whatever, anything you can relate. Or your college, let's take an example of your college, and they have implemented D365. So what all colleges will have? Colleges will have basically teaching is their business, right? If we just call it as a business, let's take it as teaching is their business. To teach, they should have professors, and professors are nothing but lecturers, and professors are nothing but they are employees of that particular college. So if they are teaching, they also expect a kind of a salary. To give a salary and to take admission of students, students are their customers, right? There has to be a somebody which takes care of that, which is finance department. So every semester, finance department sends you a notification, guys, please pay the fees, right? So when you pay the fees, it goes into their accounts. So they have to maintain books of accounts. Say for example, for semester seventh semester, we have 50 students, and those many people out of 50, 30 people have paid their fees. They have to maintain it. There are 10 people who are paid partially, and then there are about 10 people who have not paid at all. Okay, so all that has to be maintained. So for that there will be one module which is called a finance, right? So there could be, you will have exams, and you have to pay the fees to your university, and then your college will send you a circular, university has declared that examination state. You have to fill the form and you have to pay the fees, right? So all of that also has to go into the account, and from college account it will go into universities. So all that financial transaction has to be done. So another example is college has to pay a fees, salary to professors, support staff, right? And it has to buy some stuff for students. For example, for your labs, it has to buy laptops or computers, right? So all that, this is another thing. All that should also happen. For that, they have to have a finance department that take case of that. Now comes another department. I gave you an example, buying of laptops. So if you're buying a laptop, you have to talk to multiple vendors, right? For example, forget about college. You want to buy a laptop, and your father is your financer. So that is, your father is your finance money. And you are the consumer, you want to buy a laptop from a vendor. So you will not go to only one shop and buy, right? You will talk to multiple people, you will talk to your friends, you will go to Reliance store, you go to some other electronics, you go to Apple if you have too much money. Then you will, right? You will come to a conclusion, okay, MacBook fits my needs, or Dell laptop or HP laptop fits my need. Then you will ask them for a quotation. Then you will talk to your father, you will take approval from him. So this, your father will say, I'll give only this much of money. Then you will buy a laptop, right? So Reliance, Apple, or if there are any other store, Pi, there are many multiple stores in India. So they are all your, retailers, right? You can think of them as they are vendors who basically supply you laptops. So if your college is buying laptops, they have to talk to multiple people, and once you are buying, you are going to you are simple you are going to buy one laptop, so that's fine. If a college is buying a laptop in bulk, then it has to follow some kind of a process, right? It has to go to the management, they have to approve it, so all that needs to be handled, and then they have to raise a purchase order to, say for example, they are buying from Reliance stores, they have to raise a purchase order to Reliance stores. So that is called procurement. You are procuring something from Reliance, so there will be a separate process for that, and there will be a separate module for that. So we saw there is a separate module for finance, there is a separate module for procurement. Now comes one more important module where you can basically relate to it, right? HRs. So any company, say for example, your college. So your college is seeing exponential growth. There are a lot of students taking admission in your college. So people, they have to hire some professors so that they can teach your students. To hiring process, how it happens, the human resource will take care of that, right? They have to look for candidates, they have to schedule interviews, then they have to decide on their salaries, then they have to create a PF account. Again, finance is involved in that. So there will be a separate module for HR. So different business will have different type of processes in their company, and all that, to handle all that, there will be different modules. So I'm just showing you list of modules here. If you go inside that, you will see there will be many processes, right? So this is how basic the one slide screen of D365 looks like. Moving on. So to do a development in a D365, you should have a Visual Studio. So earlier, it used to be called as a Microsoft Dynamics AX. Now it is called as D365. So in AX they had a different IDE, but now in D365 they use Visual Studio. So Visual Studio 2017, 2019, and now I think 2022 is also supported. And to do a development in Visual Studio, you have to have install a D365 extension. If you are deploying virtual machine, I'll come to virtual machine deployment, how you can do it. You have to have, if you are deploying virtual machines that is provided by Microsoft, by default, this extension will be installed. But now they call it something called as unified development experience, where you can configure your local laptop to connect to D365. Correct. So this is an extension. It's a Visual Studio. I have taken it from Visual Studio 2019 Dynamics 365. Here you will see something called as application object tree. So application object tree is nothing but it is a kind of a central repository for all your objects. So to do any development, let me switch into to this one. To do any development, right? So I hope you guys know about three tier architecture, right? So there will be a client, there will be a middleware, and then there will be a database. Right? So all these guys, they interact with each other. This is a basic one or no one that you guys must have studied in your school. Right? This is your DB, this is your middleware, and this is your client system. Correct? This is your DB. So for D365, and they interact two-way. Huh? It's a two-way interaction. So your client sends a request. I want to take a look at all the customers, right? They send a request. That request go to middleware, where it generate where all the logic will be there, like how the customers are stored and how the customers report needs to be generated, And if it has to interact with the database, it will basically pull everything from database and then send it to middleware. Yeah, all the processing happens here and then it is sent to client. So this is basic three-tier architecture that you guys must have studied in your colleges, right? Now, D365 uses Microsoft SQL Server, right? Because it's a Microsoft product, they use Microsoft SQL Server. Earlier in other versions, there is a support for Oracle, but now they have removed that support. Now it is only SQL Server, right? And then Object Server, I showed you this one. So all the logic resides here, right? And then you have a client. So this is nothing but your client system. So user interface we saw, right? So this is nothing but client. So you click here, you click here, you click here. It goes to database, pulls the data, show it, right? So this is at a high level how it is done. Now there are some other important concepts that you guys need to know. So all the development in D365 happens in models. So I'll tell you what is models, right? Correct? Yeah. So what are models? What Microsoft has done is they give you a base code. Say for example, you are running a college, they tell like all the colleges in India, within Andhra state or Karnataka, wherever, they have to basically follow this process. And all the finance, see for example, world finance or whatever, the accountancy, it works in the same way, whether it is in India or in the US. There are set of rules set by the accountants or chartered accountant. It has to follow some process. Okay? And to implement that, you have to develop a software and they have to write also the code. So that is your base, right? That is your base. So this is a basic, but on top of that, you want to do some kind of development yourself. So for all that base, right? Microsoft, so this red circle, this circle that I am saying, this is the basic, right? This is a basic. They will say, okay, this is the foundation, they call it, right? So this is the foundation model, right? Don't get confused with the name model and all. Just see they have a foundation pack, right? And if you want to do your customizations that are specific to your customers, right? Microsoft says on top of my basic code, okay, this is a basic pack. You want to implement something, you can implement. So I showed you, right? M1, M2, and so you can implement your own models on top of what is already provided by Microsoft. And why they did this approach? You may ask like why I can't do any kind of a development here. So what happens is if you try to do some kind of a modifications here, earlier it was allowed. Earlier you can make a changes anything over here, right? So what Microsoft thought is if people are going to change the way the product behaves, then there will be a problem because anyone can come and do any type of customizations. Then the customers will think, oh, okay, the standard works like this, but since our guys did some development, somewhere something has broken, right? So if there is a process flow, okay, this is the way the standard process flow works. You you come here and you make some modifications because someone asked you to do some kind of a modification, so you are kind of breaking the standard way of working, right? And then when you want to upgrade, so when you want to upgrade in the sense, when you want to move to the next version of the product, you have to bring all the customizations you have done over here, right? All the customization that you have done here, you have to bring it to the next next version, right? So when you're trying to bring it to the next version, since you have done a lot of customizations here, you have to bring them all again to the next level, right? It's a great development effort. And it could also happen that this process may not support it, whatever the customizations you have done, it may not support here. So what Microsoft done is, let not allow people to change what is basic. Okay, you can still change it, but you have to write. So if I just show you in this context, so this is my standard, right? And if you want to build something else, you have to build on top of this, right? You cannot just change this line the way you want. You have to create an kind of, they call it as extension. You have to create an extension for which you are the owner. I will not allow you to change any code here, but you can modify this code as per your needs in this layer, not in this layer. Because tomorrow if you want to get rid of it, you can easily get rid of it. You don't have to make any extra effort. You can just throw this away, right? But still my base remains the same. Just think just think of, this is the you are building a house and you are putting a basement. So this is your base, right? If this is strong, your house will be strong. Later on in the house, you can change the way you want. You can make your own interior something that looks fancy and all. You can change it over here, but base should be same. Base should be strong. So that's the concept they have brought it over here. And all the changes that you want to do, you can do it in your own layer. And they call it, and within that layer you can have multiple models, right? So when I say multiple models, what is, say for example, HR department wants to do some kind of modification on top of what is there in the foundation. So for anything that you want to do for HR department, you will have one model. So sales department wants to do, so I'll do S2. And then there is a different department, they want to do something, so I will do it in M3. But make sure that all of this has to work together. So it's not like they work in silos, right? It has to work together. All of them have to work together. Your changes, Microsoft changes, everything has to work together to make a successful ERP implementation so that any business can use it. Correct? Is it clear to you guys? That is basically about the development and development with D365. Now moving on to Power Apps, right? So this is also one of the very important and a very sought after skill in D365. It's not very if you are going into D365 space, it is not very expected to have only D365. Everyone asks you to do the Power Apps development also, right? So when I say Power Platform, it is not only like you have to do the apps. There are multiple other things that you have to do. Say for example, here I can show you on the, there are flows, right? So what are flows? Flows are nothing but you want to, so as soon as you pay your you know fees, a notification has to come to your mobile, or a notification have to come to your email. So that is handled by the flow. So in D365 system, you onboard a new student. When I say onboard, you create a record of new student. then a notification should go to finance department, it has to go to the student and to their parent. So all those things are handled in the flows, right? Then comes the power apps. Say for example, I just touched upon on the flows, and there are tables. I'll come to it when I explain more on the power apps. So power apps are, for example, in your mobile you have multiple apps, right? Android apps, and you have apps from the Apple Store, right? So uh, you might have seen the job description, like we want Android developer, we want uh, iOS developers and all those things. So similarly, Microsoft has come up with this Power Platform where you can create apps on top of D365 data. So when I say the tables, this is kind of a repository for your Power Apps, right? So there are two types of Power Apps that you can create. One is your model driven app, and another is canvas apps, right? Model driven apps are basically the apps that are more intuitive towards data, so you can see the data verse here, right? So if you want to see the examples of creating your own apps, you can have a student account, and then you can go and make your hands dirty. In this episode, I'll be basically covering on at a high level what is power apps, and then what are the different components there. Just don't get jump into power platform and start building the apps, and you should know the basic concepts very clear. What is dataverse? So dataverse is a place where you can see data from multiple sources. So in this case you can have a D365. So you can see here there are tables, right? You can create your own tables, right? And you can push all the data that you have in D365 into Dataverse, right? There are standard integrations that is Microsoft team is giving. All you have to do is just configure it. Then you have your Dataverse. All your data that is there in D365 is available in your Dataverse. Using that, you can create your applications. So I touched upon the model driven app, where more importance is given to data than the look and feel, right? That is it is model driven app. When I say model, it is more data driven. Canvas app, where more you know emphasis is given on the design, look and feel, ease of use of your target audience, right? These are the two ways in which you can create a Power App, and these are different components. So why they are showing SharePoint here? You may be getting confused. Why they are showing Excel? Why they are showing SQL? Right? So these are different components that you can use in your Power App development. Say for example, you can just click on a Power SharePoint side, you can upload some their document there, then you can use it in your apps. So everything is integrated. So this is a kind of a platform for you where you can develop the apps, right? You can have multiple solutions. There is an environment window over here. What this environment window does, so for example, you have multiple customers, right? So customer A, customer B, customer C. So for each customer you want to have some kind of a development environment. So those things you can do it, or you can set, okay, I'm working on customer A, so this is his workspace, and this is the apps I am creating, this is the dataverse, this is SharePoint, this is the Excel where I can pull and push data. It is very important for you to learn at this stage power apps and flows. These two are very sought after skills in the market today. Flows can be integrated with multiple applications, not only with D365. Say for example, in my Azure, right? In my portal, right? Let me see if I can just show you. Okay, before we go into, right? make.powerapps.com is the environment for you to log in to create your apps. If you have a Hotmail account, just see earlier they used to give uh, for students, right? They used to give for 200 work credits, where you can use those credits to learn the Power Platform and all those things. Just see. Otherwise, in my next class, I'll try to create some kind of an environment and show you how you guys can do it, right? So there are two. Right now, it is not working here. I think it needs a corporate account. So make.powerapps.com is the place where you have to log in and start creating your apps. Let me try it with Edge. Maybe sometimes it doesn't allow you. Always use Edge for D365, right? So you can see here, you can, I just showed you, right? So someone is asking like what we'll be covering basically in Power Apps, right? We Canvas app, model driven app, we can create and we can integrate all of that in D365. I hope this answers your question. And there is something called as Power Pages also. We can try creating some Power Pages. We can create a portal. Very recently, I created one Power Page. Say for example, you are what you say, creating a portal for people where they can buy some stuff online, just like Amazon, but very light, right? They can buy and sell the hardware items using Power Pages. So that we also created on using Power Apps. And in the Power Apps, what else you can create? You can create chat box. You can create a website. Flows we covered, right? You can create blank app and all these template blank canvas app, blank app based on dataverse, Power Pages. I just talk about Power Pages, right? You can create Power Pages of your own, right? So these are things that you can do. I would suggest, like, just read something. You can also go into learn.microsoft.com, right? From there also you can do, but it is advised that you work, if you are not very well versed with Microsoft technology, it is work with some kind of a mentor, where for example us, right? You can work with us and try to get your hands dirty, and don't just learn theoretical parts, also learn the practicalities. Because in today's world, no one asks you like what is C++, what is basic variables, and all. They'll ask very advanced things. So it is good that you create this. So this is the way you can also create a flow. I talked about sending an email, right? So we can just say, okay, or maybe we can just create one small example, right? So I just say recurrence, right? I just create a recurrence. So every day at I can just say, I'm just saying the time zone. It's so when I say recurrence, it is nothing but it is just setting up like when should I when this flow should run, right? Then I'm just saying, okay, this send an email. So these are called connections. I'm just showing you so that you get an idea what all you can do with the Power Apps. I gave you an example of sending an email, right? And once a student is onboarded, you want to send an email. So I would say send an email to Pradeep, right? Pradeep at gmail.com, right? Something like that. So if the email is valid, it will send. So what subject it should have? Hi, welcome to D365 training, right? I can just save it. It is taking some time to save. Yeah. Then every day, whatever the recurrence at this time, I have just chosen something. Maybe we can choose at 5:30, right? So every day, for after every, 4 hours, send an email to Pradeep to his Gmail account. Welcome to D365 training. Say, for example, this training institute wants to send you a reminder once a day. Then I will once a day send an email to people who wants to join our training. So they want to send a email. So they may also forget, right? So they will set up this flow to run every day to all the people who are interested in their training with a subject reminder of today's training at 5:30 p.m. and all this. Then they save. So automatically they can set it up and they can send it. Yeah, very simple example. Very simple example so that you guys in the next section we can go and get our hands dirty in, if you are more interested on power apps we can go and try and develop some power apps. Okay, that's basically what I wanted to cover today. And if you have any questions and everything you can also reach out to the training. Yeah, that basically ends the training for today.